My God, was it hard to get one of these in hand. All my local stores only have figures at least 7 months old at this point, and there is nowhere online that you can get it for even a reasonable price. Really, Amazon? $89 plus 30 shipping and handling. Almost Titan class prices for a liter. Go screw yourselves, no way in hell. Apparently, this is because Canada and Australia got all of these, since according to my fans who live in those countries, their stores are positively choking on these figures. So huge thanks to the Decepticonadian for doing me a solid and picking a copy up to send over to me. He even drew this fan art and put it in the box as well. It's a massive help, dude, and I'm so grateful. To you and to the few other people who offered to pick one up for me. It's 86 Snarl. But first, your likes! He's cute. And if you enjoyed this video by the end and you aren't subscribed already, please consider it. So yeah, it's the one that people were worried we wouldn't get because he's only in the movie for all of 2 frames. But I think 86 has proven at this point that it's basically just an excuse to get awesome new figures of the characters that the designers really wanted. And I think we should all thank them for that. Though the first thing I noticed about this thing when I got it out of the box is that the plastic looks really cheap in comparison to his brethren in the 86 Dinobots. Hasbro probably finally put Mark in a chokehold and was like, enough of giving them so much value for their money! Make it cheaper! And his only response was, okay, barely. Because while this looks cheaper and feels just a bit lighter than his teammates, this is 100% still among the best figures that Hasbro has put out in a long while. I will say, before the endless deluge of praise I'm about to give this thing, there is one really stupid thing that they've done here. And it's giving him these spikes that are crowding his head. Guys, that was just his back panel coming up to the nape of his neck. It wasn't a weird pair of epaulets. Had you not actually seen the show or handled the old G1 toy, which was one of my favorites? G1 Grimlock may have sucked bad enough that when I finally got it, I was like, oh, this would have killed Little Me's interest in the Transformers. But G1 Snarl was peak, and this is peak like a mountaintop. The 86 line has always been strange on the sculpting front, with a lot of them getting very smooth surfaces, but the Dinobots in particular have always stood apart with a whole lot of new added detail. I especially like what they've done with his back, I don't know what to call these things. Wings? Crests singular? They are definitely trying to be more wing-like with this sculpt, but whatever it is, it's cool. And honestly, of all the Dinobots, I think Snarl has always been the most ostentatious. So giving him even more visual punch really pairs well with the design. The golden plates he has all over are truly iconic, though weirdly enough, here they are for the most part rubber, except for the 2 on his shoulders and the 2 on his tail. Inexplicably, the shoulder ones are inserts like the rest. So why are these made out of hard plastic that it feels like will shear off if I sneeze on them? This is the first of the Dinobots to have some real visible hollowness while he stands there, with his shins being a little empty on the inside. It's funny because it's actually a way bigger gap than most figures have in their entire bodies on each of his legs. But that's just because this dude is so much bigger than the average figure, so it doesn't really hurt it that much. The percent of him that's gap is low as hell. And despite the fact that the plastic looks worse, I think that this might be the Dinobot that got the most paint, as while it's kind of sparsely throughout the figure doing a great job on its own, the whole tail and all of his spikes are painted, which with the tail is technically both on the inside and out, so there's a lot here. I don't think the yellow plastic that they used in place of that looks too much worse, so it could have worked without it in my opinion, but the figure overall has plenty of breakup, so it looks good no matter what, and the paint is just a bonus. Like all the Dinobots, he's rocking that BDE, like he stuffed an entire sock drawer down his pants. And I'm talking about the drawer itself, not the clothing inside. I can literally pick this figure up by his dick. I'm sure everyone in the comments is cringing right now. And I've been praising the individual aspects of this guy's appearance this whole time, but let me just say that this dude looks cool as fuck. Like, this is a badass looking figure, and once again, he looks even better as part of the group. Though all these boys are so beefy that I've kind of run out of room to display them all together in the light box. Someone has got to take a knee or something, though I don't know that it's really going to help given the size of all their shins. And then the head is very odd, because interestingly enough, Snarl almost never really got a good shot of his head back in the old G1 cartoon. He was usually in the background, furthest from the camera, or the camera was low to the ground, emphasizing his size, so his face was partially covered by his chunk. And whenever we did get something akin to a good face shot of him, it was always clearly not quite on model, looking rather soft. You could kind of go off the old toy, which for sure didn't look like the show model, and the Power of the Primes figure was absolutely emulating the G1 figure, so this was the first time anyone officially at Hasbro had the chance to really define what Snarl here is supposed to look like. And they decided on going with Megatron? Seriously, if you get rid of the Galvatron head spikes, this is just a solid ringer for the Decepticon leader. Possibly portrayed by John Cena. Am I crazy? I think this looks like someone that I've seen, and the only thing that comes to my mind is that this has Cena vibes. Am I just looking for it because everyone's got the 80 sickness, or does it really just look like someone? Though I can't really blame them, because in the show, this boy, well, he looked quite goofy in the face department. Anyways, great head, great looking robot mode. But then we get to the accessory, and this is the only one of the Dinobots to come with a sword. Quite possibly because he's the only Dinobot whose concept art had him with one instead of a gun. I'm really getting the feeling that maybe the guy who made this figure didn't know much about the character and just based the figure entirely off of this picture. But hey, finally, a sword for the Dinobots. Awesome, though it does kind of torpedo the theory that Swoop was going to come with the swords for the rest of the team. I assume at this point that Swoop is just going to be as big as the other 4, and you know what? If he's not, I will break into the Hasbro offices and fill all of their disk drives and USB ports with human feces. Anyways, the sword looks pretty good. It's well detailed and painted, but unfortunately, it's made out of rubber. Why are you doing this now, Hasbro? This is disgusting and wrong, and I hate it. Other than that, it's a pretty cool accessory. As for posability, this is one of the best in the group. Head has an expressive amount of side-to-side, full rotation, and all of the up. Shoulders pull a solid amount more than a 90. The first of the 86 Dinobots that have maximum elbows. Smooth wrist swiv, and if you untransform him a bit, then you get sword-wielding wrists. Extendo waist to establish dominance. Hips are unimpeded in all directions and are on good ratchets, just like the shoulders. Normal 90 knees you can untransform for a good bit more, and massive ankle pivot with a huge toe down. So while all the Dinobots so far have been a fair bit better than the average on the posing, Snarl here stands out as having the most. True blue sword-wielding wrists are a big plus for this team. Being able to get more than a 90 on the knees is awesome, even if it doesn't look great, and having the deepest elbows of the set really puts this guy up over. Plus, as one of the Autobots' preeminent robot mode flyers, being able to look up fully is a great bonus. As for transformation, I think that this is probably the second best behind Sludge. Grimlock is exactly what he should be, but at the same time it is something that we've already had before, since he's just a cleaned up version of the Masterpiece figure, and it was always a pretty simple conversion. Slag was a bit more unique and complex than Grimlock, but he's also just different for the sake of being different, so it does some really stupid shit like faking the toes ending up on his back so the real ones can instead end up on his butt as part of the tail. And he falls apart for like no reason. It's almost impossible for me to transform that thing without popping off one, if not both, of his back wings. Sludge is a genius explosion of creativity that trends into maybe a bit too complex, but Snarl here is creative, interesting, and different without feeling like it's forced, and it doesn't wander into being too complicated. But what does hold it back a bit is just that it's a little rough around the edges. It kind of scrapes in ways that you don't like, and it gets hung up on things that are irritating. But overall, it's fun and interesting and relatively quick. The first day I had him, I transformed it like 20 times just because I was having that much fun. Though it is annoying how the dino foot can pop off instead of coming out, and I don't like how the backplate is squishy rubber. And then the Stegosaurus mode is great, though I do have a few issues. For one, I hate the way his forward feet look. This hump at their back looks like he's got some kind of growth, and the extreme downward angle of his tail irritates me. Both looking kind of bad and also trying to scrape off some paint on the ground. So that's frustrating. It also gives him a really flat ass that doesn't pair with those thick thighs. The last complaint I have with the way that this thing looks is the fact that he doesn't have the gold stripe running down to his tail. And you know what? Perhaps that's more accurate to the show, but it looks really boring when every other version of this character ever has had the golden runway down his backside. All that said, it would make sense if that was gone in the name of hypertoon accuracy, because this is quite likely the most show-accurate version of this character to ever exist in plastic. And while there's a little mess up around where the head connects to the body, for the most part it just looks fantastic. Pretty much every strength the robot mode had is here, but without the confusing Megatron head. Though I suppose that would have looked really weird in alt mode. He's got a bit of indentation you can notice towards his hip section, and some waffling on the forward dino feet, but the paint punches up everything it needed to, with these extra strips of black on the thighs I think really adding something. It's nice and stump-like. I love most of the stuff about this. I'd argue that it might be the least good looking of the 86 dinos so far, but at the same time, that's by degrees, not wide margins. Posing is pretty solid. Opening and closing mouth, though with no blast effect port, so that's a shame. Though he does have 2 on his tail, but it's weird since he should have 4 spikes, not 2. Head has a little up if you untransform it, which looks less bad than you'd think. Arms have a lot of in and a little out, plus full rotation and bend at the feet. Legs can hinge for an I have to pee pose, full rotation, and 90 knee bend. And then the feet have a lot of up and down and rotation. So this is far from a brick. Honestly, really good for an animal mode. You can at least make him look like he's moving, which is a bit more common with Beastformers these days, but in the history of Transformers, this is overall something new. So yeah, this is an excellent figure. If I had to rate the team overall, despite the fact that Grimlock is still probably my favorite, he's just everything I ever wanted. In terms of best, it's gotta go Sludge for just being an all-around goat who is tragically held back by QC for most people, but I am one of the lucky few where his knees are fine. Then Snarl, as the best poser with a strong look and an interesting and new transformation with good dino posing. He's kind of the second best in almost every category except for posing where he is the best. Then Grimlock, who looks great, feels great, poses great, though is probably the worst in this set at that, transforms great though it's least involved, and then has a fantastic dino mode. It's not that he's doing anything wrong, it's just that it feels like the other two are more clever than he is. And then Slag, who is just definitely the worst. The robot mode is awkwardly wide because they overdid it on his shoulders. He's the only one with a true backpack, and it's a really bad backpack that he's not supposed to have and loves falling apart. The transformation is not as clever as it thinks it is, and it's trying oh so very hard to be clever. And then the dino mode is just kind of the least of the dino modes, especially with those gimpy back legs. Though that's not to say that that thing is terrible, it's just the least great of so far what's been an astonishing set of Dinobots. And if he's the worst one, then we are eating really good for once. Now, I don't know if I can call Snarl here a micro masterpiece, which is the same problem I've had with all of these Dinobots. While they're absolutely the best ones we've ever gotten, and I pretty much wouldn't change a thing, they also don't really feel like they're aiming for that label, what with the ways that they've intentionally changed things. This guy specifically has a very off-brand head, just because it feels like they could and they didn't like the old one. But if the guy who made this thing didn't really know the character, then he still did a damn good job. If this can't be called a micro masterpiece for intentionally trying to be too different, then it's at least as good as that title would imply. And that's not half what I have to say, but it's enough what I have to say. And I know, you know, what everyone else tells you to do at the end of these videos. So, if you liked what you saw here, please do that. And if you'd like to take it a step further, then please share this video with any friend you think may be interested. I hope you all enjoyed listening to me waste your time.